punk rock's queen of fashion, Congo's contemporary art star, and an author with a prophetic take on a pandemic. That's all coming up in today's show. But first, she's fashion's grande dame of English eccentricity. Vivienne Westwood is in the spotlight here in France with a new exhibition at the Museum of Fabrics in Lyon. Lee Price has spent 30 years accumulating key pieces made by the British designer, and that collection now provides a history of her subversive style. Claire Rush reports.
The past juxtaposing the present. From 18th century couture to punk rock. The ways in which fashion trends of old have influenced renowned designer Vivienne Westwood are currently on display at the Musée des Tissus, or Museum of Fabrics, in Lyon. The exhibit, called Art, Fashion and Subversion, is the first in France to be dedicated to Westwood, retracing the 79-year-old's career as one of the architects of punk fashion in the 1970s, to groundbreaking pioneer of Fashion Week runways, to political and environmental activist.
Il y a vraiment plein de questions qu'elle porte qui font sens de nos jours. Et nous, on est un musée où on garde des tissus qui ont des milliers d'années. Alors, forcément, on regarde la fast fashion d'un autre œil. Et on se dit, oui, son mantra actuel, achetez moins, choisissez et faites durer, pour nous, c'est ce qu'on veut aussi transmettre dans le musée.
The pieces come from Lee Price, who for years worked in Vivienne Westwood stores and has collected her creations since he was a teenager. For Price, the exhibit's location is key.
It's lovely where you live in a city and the local museum, you can exhibit all your clothes there, and they understand the historical purposes of the clothes and the reference of the clothes, and they have all of those in their archive to show alongside the clothes.
The exhibit will run until January 17th.
To the Magnin Art Gallery now in Paris, where its current exhibition, Kings of Kin, is showcasing the work of three iconic artists from the Democratic Republic of Congo. One of them is Chéri Samba. He arrived in the French capital earlier this year and ended up spending the lockdown here due to travel restrictions. It proved to be a fruitful time for the painter, as our reporters found out.
Being on lockdown in Paris, far from his native DRC, didn't stop Chéri Samba from feeling inspired by the color green, for example, seen by many as a symbol of renewal and security, and by current events. His latest work, seen here, being a call for tolerance.
Tozali biso nyonso ndenge moko, ce qui veut dire qu'on est tous pareils. Il n'y a pas un grand discours, ce sont des choses qu'on connaît, qu'on est tous pareils, qu'on arrête nos conneries.
Self-taught, Samba launched his artistic career illustrating comic books and political cartoons, satirical forms that continue to inform his work, even though painting is now his preferred medium. For Samba, creating art with a strong, immediate message, understandable by all, is key.
On choisit quand même des choses qui peuvent intéresser les gens, ou alors, dans mon cas, c'était des choses que souvent les gens ne voulaient pas, ou les gens avaient peur d'en parler, et que moi, c'est là où je trouvais mon intérêt de prendre des choses qui faisaient un peu tabou et que moi je les présente aux autres.
The works of Moke and Bodas Isaac Congolese are also exhibited, but of the three so-called kings of Kinshasa, Samba is the only one still alive. For gallery founder André Magnin, however, the impact of all artists is still felt today.
Ils furent exposés principalement à partir des années 80. Avant ça, ça se passe à Kinshasa, sur la façade de leurs ateliers. Ils ont, on peut dire, commencé ensemble leur carrière d'artiste. À l'époque des artistes dits populaires, c'est le nom qu'avait trouvé Shay Samba pour décrire les artistes qui s'inspiraient du peuple et redonnaient à la population. En termes de créativité, si vous voulez, ces trois-là sont indépassables dans le genre.
Three Congolese artists that have left their mark on art history, inspiring a new generation of artists not only in their native DRC, but across the entire African continent.
Now to a novel that features face masks, people cowering from public coughing, and signs warning others to wash their hands. It all sounds eerily familiar, and it's all in Emma Donoghue's new book, The Pull of the Stars. The Irish author has been speaking to France 24's Eve Jackson from her home in Ontario, Canada.
Hello, bonjour. I'm Emma Donoghue. This is my new novel, The Pull of the Stars. The pull of the stars basically means the flu because it comes from the Italian word for influence, the influence of the stars on human life. From what I could gather, the plague was general all over Ireland. The spectre had a dozen names: the Great Flu, the Khaki Flu, Blue Flu, Black Flu, the Grippe or the Grip. That word always made me think of a heavy hand landing on someone's shoulder and gripping it hard. The malady, some called it euphemistically, or the war sickness, on the assumption that it must somehow be a side effect of 4 years of slaughter. Poison brewed in the trenches or spread about by all this hurly-burly and milling about across the globe.
Emma Donoghue, hello.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. Now, your new novel just happens to be set in Dublin in the middle of a pandemic. The publishers brought forward the release date, unlike for most writers at this moment in time. Was that luck or a shrewd career move on your part?
Are you kidding? It was a complete shock to me. And it didn't even occur to me while I was finishing up, last February, I was finishing up my last draft of the novel, which was already sold to the publishers. And I submitted it to them thinking it would be published next year. And it did not occur to me that COVID would have any bearing on it because I just was so absorbed in the world of the book, the 1918 pandemic. So then my publishers proposed that we publish it really quickly this summer. And I was startled and I felt a little sheepish about, trying to sell anything this year, frankly. But in fact, I've been really glad to be part of the conversation about health crises and in particular how magnificent carers are and also how health crises hit the poor and the downtrodden much harder than anybody else.
Tell us then where you got the inspiration for the story.
I have to credit an anonymous journalist in The Economist magazine. They wrote a review article about the centenary of the 1918 pandemic. And that was really atmospherically written. And I suddenly realized that if I wrote about that flu, it could be like a sort of post-apocalyptic dystopian novel. It had a very eerie vibe of, modern, busy city life suddenly grinding to a halt because everyone's so afraid that they'll catch death from the nearest stranger.
It's really rare and refreshing to see a book set during World War I and make it about women. It's based in a hospital ward where there are nurses in charge of pregnant women who have got this flu. Why did you want to do that?
Well, very early on, I came across this fact I'd never encountered before, that women in late pregnancy or just after birth were the most likely to catch this flu and have terrible side effects. And I'd never heard that. And I thought it was a really interesting opportunity to, as you say, center a 1918 novel on women. And I realized that tiny little quarantine ward for women in labour could be kind of an equivalent of the trenches, a space of awful sort of claustrophobia and tension and danger, but also such solidarity and camaraderie.
And it is a very political book. Was that intentional?
I think all books are political. If you choose to write about comfortable people sipping wine in their villas, that's actually just as political as if you set a story in the banlieue and have riots. Either way, you're taking some position on whether you want the status quo to continue or whether you're outraged at social injustice. We all make our choices when we write books.
And there's a gorgeous scene in the book where the two women in the story are on the roof, kind of falling in love with each other, I guess. Do you think lesbian storylines are becoming less rare in Irish literature?
I do, yeah. I mean, when I was a university student, I remember coming across a book by Mary Dorsey, and it had openly lesbian storylines and was by an Irish writer, and it blew my mind because I honestly hadn't felt there was room in our culture for stories like that. So now it's so much more common and so much less of a big deal, and it's been remarkable to see Ireland transform so much just during my adulthood. I'm really grateful.
And just going back to some of your past work, Room was your 7th novel, the story of a mother and child held captive in a garden shed. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize and it was made into a film. You wrote the screenplay. What effect did the success of that, the massive success of Room, the sales, the Oscar nominations have on your life?
It didn't transform it because I was already 40 and I'd been writing full-time all my life. So, those were the really big facts. It just added a lot of extra readers and a feeling of having more sort of cultural reach. So it's been a huge plus. It's been nothing but good. And I particularly enjoyed my encounter with the film world, which writers often find bruising or traumatizing. But because I went the sort of European art movie sort of direction by working with a small Irish film company, and we made it an Irish-Canadian co-production, it was really an art piece that happened to get to the Oscars rather than something that was, aiming for commercial success.
And Emma, you famously write while walking on a treadmill, I discovered. Are you still doing that?
I am, yeah. I mean, not all day, but a couple of hours a day. It's a wonderful way to sneak exercise into your life if you're naturally lazy.
Emma, just before we say goodbye, we always end our interviews with our guests' cultural pick of the moment. What have you chosen for us?
Well, I'm afraid your French viewers may know this, but I have to say I've been blown away by 10%, which on Netflix in Canada turns up as Call My Agent. I think it's such a smart show. It has one of the best lesbian villain characters around, and I particularly love the kind of meta aspect that they have real actors playing themselves on it. It makes it a super smart commentary on the media.
Agent, rôle de métier, travailler dans l'ombre pour que les autres voient. Je pourrais pas, moi.
Tu connais cette agence américaine, UBA? Je me disais que j'avais peut-être envie de l'acheter.
Qu'est-ce que vous croyez? Nous ne sommes pas à vendre.
Très gros bonus.
Combien?
Allez, 10 000 chacun.
15.
12.
15.
Finally, it's that time of year again when Paris plays host to art installations and happenings for one night only. The Nuit Blanche is a chance to take to the city streets in search of unexpected flashes of creativity after dark. This year's edition involves cinematic projections on historical buildings, floating inflatables, theatrical performances in a farmyard setting, and much more. We'll leave you with a short preview. Well, for more arts and culture, do remember to check out our website, and you can keep up with us on social media too. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.
It may be a cliche, but we truly are living through extraordinary times. COVID-19, climate change, a global movement against racism. Here on France 24, we want to bring you the human stories behind the headlines. The programme is called The New Normal, and it features original reporting every week from France 24's correspondents all around the world.
The New Normal on France 24 and France24.com.